Hello, everyone, and welcome to our October edition of the Microsoft Viva Community Call. We are lucky enough to be joined today by Liz Friedman, Senior Director of AI and HR at Microsoft, and David Spahr, Director of AI and HR at Microsoft. And we'll be hearing from them with our special topic content in just a few moments, and I'll give a full intro. But first, I wanted to just walk you through our agenda. So we're going to go through some announcements and upcoming events, so what we've recently announced, and then what's coming next. And then we'll have our special topic, how Microsoft HR is using Viva and M365 Copilot to empower employees, kind of speaking through the lens of communication, skilling, and measurement as these key areas where Viva and Copilot work together, and also talking through how this can be used for any kind of change management practice in your organization. And then finally, we'll have a Q&A. So please, if you have questions, drop them as comments at the AKA link you see on screen here, and we'll try to answer those in the Q&A portion of the call. So latest in Viva, want to make sure that folks know about some of our recent releases. And of course, as we near Ignite in November, we'll have a lot more to share. But recently, we've announced that Microsoft Copilot Academy is now available to all Microsoft 365 Copilot users. So you can subscribe to the topics you care about in Viva Engage now. So giving you that really specific information in areas that you care about and tailoring it to the individual user. We also have a new blog that has a very long list of what's new in Viva Insights. So important if you're a Viva Insights user. And then improved experience for Viva Connections resources section. So that blog post will kind of go into detail about what the improved experience entails, and then how you can take advantage of it. And then finally, we have some really great enhancements to Viva Amplify Analytics. So for all you corporate communicators out there, you'll definitely want to check that out to see what analytics you can bring back to yourselves and your teams to improve as you move forward, and especially as we look towards 2025 coming in hot. And then we have two more events coming up that I wanted to make sure to highlight. We have from our people science team, our AI empowerment series, how HR uses AI. So if you're here for this session, you're watching this and you want a deeper dive, that'll be a great place for you to go. And then building psychological safety happening on November 18th. So again, through the people science team, and really about building psychological safety on your team so that you can drive stronger business impact and a stronger employee experience. So I wanted to, before we jump in, make sure everyone understands the digital event code of conduct. And we do not tolerate harassment of any kind. And I'm sure if you've attended a Microsoft event before, you have seen this slide. But we expect all digital event participants to uphold our code of conduct, and we will not tolerate, as I mentioned, harassment or discrimination in any category at this event. So I'm going to take us to our special topic now. We're very lucky to have Liz and David here, who are really our boots on the ground and key strategists when it comes to Microsoft HR and using Viva to power M365 Copilot usage and impact. So first we have Liz. Liz Friedman is the Senior Director of HR AI Transformation, driving human-centric organizational change. She and her team focus on increasing awareness, usage, and innovative application of AI in the HR space to enhance HR and employee experiences and foster innovation. So welcome, Liz, and I'm excited you're here.
Thanks so much. Great to be here.
And then we also have with us David. David is a director in Microsoft HR and part of Liz's team, helping drive the adoption of AI within HR. So he's looking at a lot of analytics. He's primarily focused on understanding and measuring the impact, including the benefits AI provides to employees and the company, and how HR's AI initiatives contribute to the larger Microsoft people priorities. Welcome, David.
Thanks, Lucy. Excited to be here today. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. So before I hand it off to our speakers, I wanted to, if we go to the next slide, just tee up Viva for those of you who are not as familiar. So Viva has these 3 areas in which we equip um, organizations to, create the best possible employee experience and drive business impact. So the first is communication, the second is skilling, and the third is measurement. And we believe that, when you combine all of these, it drives the impact you're looking for as an organization and the best possible experience for employees. You're going to see a lot about in this presentation how the HR team at Microsoft is enabling and empowering employees to be Copilot, M365 Copilot users and get the most out of it. But I want to also say that how the team is thinking through this can really be applied to any change that your organization is going through, any change management that you're thinking about. And you can sort of use Viva in that way to drive change. So whether it's a reorg or a, any kind of new tech that you're driving your organization, I want you to think through that lens as we walk through the presentation today. And of course, if you have any questions about that, please put them in the comments and we'll try to get to those during our Q&A. So if we go to the next slide, I wanted just to touch on, at a high level, the challenges that HR practitioners are facing today, and then passed over to Liz to talk through how her team and the larger Microsoft HR team is thinking about these challenges. But the first that we hear a lot is protecting employee confidentiality and privacy, obviously a very large concern, and staying up to date with the latest laws and compliance around this. And then navigating uncertainty about where and when HR and employees can responsibly use Copilot and work, knowing there's, employee data involved. So, we know through our latest Work Trends Index report that the majority of employees at enterprise organizations are using AI in their daily work, but it may not be have the kind of oversight and guardrail that is important at an organization. So HR teams are really thinking through that. And then understanding data security, appropriate flow of information, keeping up with the ongoing introduction of new features and capabilities. So, you may see Copilot, Viva, many Microsoft products, just to use an example, constantly rolling out new features and new opportunities to kind of take advantage of this new technology. But that's a lot to keep up with. And then finally, embracing elective technology and making sure you have the buy-in both from the employees and from leadership that is hoping to make the most of this technology. So I'll now pass it over to Liz just to give us the inside scoop on how our team is thinking about this.
Awesome. Great setup, Lucy, and thanks. And, just looking at the different categories on the slide, it's, 5 challenges among many, certainly, that we'd have with what's coming. And there's so much that we do on a day-to-day basis just to get our jobs done. And then with the introduction of new technology, and especially something like AI, which has been such a massive change, there's a lot of different things that are going on in the environment that we look at and say, okay, how are we going to tackle this? And especially at this accelerated pace of change, right? Like, we've done change management for years and years, and there are tried and true practices. But now we're in a mode where things are really accelerated. And so how do we really leverage all the tools we have to be able to go through, build a strategy that will address what we need? So let me just kind of set the stage about where we are and kind of how we approach this great challenge. And I'll say it's a challenge in a very positive sense, because there's just a ton of opportunity. But also, we're doing it at a time when, people just are overwhelmed by the number of things that they can look at and learn. And so where we wanted to start was really in just grounding ourselves in a mindset of, we are in a time of change. We are in a time of extraordinary change. How do we want to approach that? And here at Microsoft, our culture is founded in growth mindset, which is very much about being a learn-it-all instead of a know-it-all, which really sets the tone for just, being open to what's out there and consuming as much as you can to learn so that you can grow and adapt to the environment. And so we started with just how can we inspire the team? How do we kind of set the vision for where we're going? And we started first in that growth mindset and like, this is a huge learning moment. And also, if you remember, with the different challenges we were looking at of how do we navigate this in a safe and responsible way, really landing or grounding in this notion of responsible AI, understanding what is AI, why is it valuable, why is it valuable to Microsoft and to HR and to individuals, and what do we need to know about it to be able to use it responsibly. And so really started there in just that very core grounding. And also, as our team started to have access to the different tools and especially Copilot, how we wanted to make sure that we weren't just saying like, hey, it's out there, but actually explicitly giving permission to go and experiment, to learn how to use this tool, to try it out in different ways, to connect with other people and see what they were doing and what they were learning. And so really, I call out this giving permission thing because often it can feel like, hey, if I'm taking time to learn something or to tinker around with something, maybe I'm not doing what I should be doing. We wanted to set the message or send the message that as part of this, movement and as part of this opportunity and being a learn-it-all, take time to invest in this. And not only is it okay, it's encouraged. We're asking you to spend that time. So that was the initial piece and just kind of setting the tone. The next was about building an infrastructure to be able to reach our audience in a way that was going to work for them. So we know with any big change, there's going to be a need to communicate with an audience and to look at how are you shifting what they're focused on and how and their behaviors that they're developing. And to do that in a rather noisy environment that's crowded with a lot of different things going on, how could we actually build the means, the channels to talk to our different audiences, to reach our different audiences or have them reach each other effectively? And that's where we use different tools at our disposal from Viva and from SharePoint to be able to create places for our teams to connect and to be able to develop the channels to be able to reach the folks that we needed to reach. And I'll walk through more of those as we go. But everything from, how do we collect ideas? How do we build communities? How do we store and make information available? How do we help people skill more easily? So we'll talk through some examples there around organizing the infrastructure to make this stuff happen. And then the last was, all right, we've got the mindset, we've got the infrastructure, now we need to drive engagement. That's where we need people to connect, whether it's one-to-one, whether it's one-to-many, whether it's asynchronously or synchronously, and to create different ways and means for people to come together to accelerate this learning and to find ways to do so within the flow of work, within the rhythm of business, any of the different descriptions of how we work. How are we actually going to get that connection to happen? And so I'll walk through a handful of examples of how we've done different pieces of this, but I wanted to start with kind of the big picture of, again, mindset, that infrastructure, and then how we drive engagement once we have everything set up. So let's move to the next slide and we'll talk about really the first piece. And again, when I think about the big picture, as we're driving change, we clearly need to communicate. We need to be able to drive learning and skilling. We need to be able to listen and we need to be able to measure. And so when I think about that mix, I'll walk through each of those different areas, starting with communications. The first thing I'll talk about is one of the very first things that we started, and this is about a year ago, and we reached out to our HR community, and this was when AI was newer on the scene. People were starting to talk about it, and we said, hey, let's have a conversation within HR about what this means. And if you're interested in going a little bit deeper, we're going to create a place for you called our HR AI Community of Practice. And this was just a place for people to go to be with other people who wanted to geek out a little bit on what was going on in the AI space. And so for that, we created a Viva Engage community, which was a place where we could go that was a distinct space with a distinct topic and invite people to opt into this community so that they could be a part of a conversation. And what we found is that it's really been kind of an anchor point for a lot of our work in this. You can call it change management and transformation, right? Of just, where can people come together and just ask questions? Where can they share articles they've been reading that are really interesting? Where can they pose challenges of like, hey, we're doing this in our team, and does anyone want to collaborate? And what we found is that this has been a really robust place for people to connect, both from kind of a peer-to-peer sense, but also via our moderator. One of the most essential elements to this community, and what we've seen in other engaged communities, is a really strong moderator who has a very clear plan and strategy for how to use the Engage platform as a means to connect. And so thinking about how often are we going to connect? How do we use different features within Engage to send announcements versus post content? And when do we kind of stoke the communication, and when do we just stand back and listen? So we've got an excellent moderator who is very focused on really making this a robust community, which is super for kind of the scaffolding, but then it's just really up to the employees who dig in. And what we found, number one, is that the opt-in rate has just continued to grow. People started with a couple hundred users, and now we've got, almost 1,000. And so it's a great starting place for people to start their conversation if they want to go a little bit more into things. And it's been a great place to discover those who are really leaning in, really kind of going a little bit further, and who are now have evolved into our champs community, which is a group of folks who are kind of those extra motivated folks, a little more, like maybe investing some more time, the ultra curious, and they are helping to drive further outreach into our teams as kind of extensions of our change management team. So Engage has really been a great place to host and build and nurture that community, and to identify folks who can help us in other parts of our change management strategy. So that's that. Let me move on to the next piece, because there's so much you can do within the community, but obviously it's not our full function. We have a global team, and we want to make sure that we are reaching into all corners of the team so that everybody feels like they can be part of this conversation, part of this movement. We have big goals in terms of driving 100% use and adoption of our Copilot tools and any other tools that come through. And so with that, we need to be able to reach people at scale. And so we think about, again, within the context of everything that's happening, how do we manage to not just add to the noise, but to kind of take our piece of the conversation and have it land in a way that's really going to be meaningful, being mindful of where our people are, how do we reach people where they are, how do we reach them across the whole function at once, and how do we then look and say, okay, let's go to this team or to this role. And so in that, we create a monthly communication called our HR AI Roundup. And it is a brief, concise, curated set of information that we feel is the most critical to know for that month. And it's how are we doing in adoption? So we just have real numbers to show how we're doing. Second is what's new, because we want to make sure people don't feel like I heard maybe something. We want to make sure they're clear on like, yep, this is the stuff that's coming and happening. And then also, what can I do now? And it can be anything from a little snack size thing that they can do to something that might be a little bit deeper, just understanding that people have different levels of time and interest and capability. So with that, we create this single newsletter, and then I hate to even call it a newsletter, but we create a single communication or roundup. And then we think about how to use our different channels to meet our different audiences. So I mentioned our champs, which is a great community that is aligned to different teams within HR. And so we'll take the roundup and we'll provide it in different channels or in different vehicles for them to be able to use it, depending on if they want to send email, depending on if they want to put a Teams post, if they want to put something into a Teams chat. or if they want to put it onto a team site. And what's nice is that if you work in Amplify, you can, we found that we can kind of build the campaign together. I'll work with my comms partner and we'll do our editing there. And then we can just take it and shift it to match the different outlets all at once. And then we can measure engagement to see what's working, what's not, and what we need to tinker with. So between Engage and Amplify, we've got two tools that have been really just super useful in helping us kind of coordinate and streamline and reach the team at scale. So I'll kind of end there from the communications piece and shift to the second topic around skilling. And clearly there's so much to learn right now, as we said, starting with the learn it all mindset. Where do you start? And that's feedback that we got early on from our folks in HR, which is, gosh, there are so many links. There's so many places I can go to learn. Where do I even start? And so if you want to flip to the next slide, this is where we wanted to curate a learning experience for our HR team. We are already using Viva Learning as our learning platform. And then within that, we created our HR Academy using the Academy's functionality. And there are academies for different functions at Microsoft. Within our HR Academy, we've had the opportunity to kind of lay out a curated set of content for our HR colleagues, which cover a range of topics. And so when AI came bursting on the scene, we now have a learning path that is an AI learning or AI basics learning path that is specific to HR. And so it can include not just all of the great content that we get that is universal and available for everyone about how do you use Copilot, but we were able to add additional content that was specific to HR and applications in HR, which really helps to make it more real, where I can go in and say, okay, if I am, working on a case in this way, or if I am, trying to reach an audience in this way, these are different tricks that I can use or different things that I can learn. So it's been a very helpful way of, again, trying to minimize the noise and create some more focus. And also within that, we can then measure, how many people are coming through and using these different assets. Where do we potentially need to do more amplification? Where are the things that people are really finding value in? So that's been a huge help from our skilling perspective, where so much, again, of our focus is on how we're learning. So we've got our communications, we've got our skilling, and then I want to shift over to how we are listening about, how are things going and how we're actually doing measurement. And for that, I will hand off to my colleague, David.
You bet. Thanks, Liz. And so shifting over to measurement, we wanted to highlight some of the approaches that we're taking to measure the adoption of Copilot in HR, but then to also provide some insight into our strategy for measuring impact. And so I'll touch on how we're leveraging Viva Glint to really help us understand employee sentiment at scale, Viva Insights Copilot reporting to track things like frequency of usage, and then also Viva Pulse here in just a couple of slides, really to help us get insights into our org's progress in adopting Copilot, and then to also understand sentiment across our individual teams. And so we'll start here with Viva Glint on this slide, which is really our go-to for capturing employee sentiment at scale across the company. And twice a year, our HR business intelligence team sends out a survey to all employees in the company to gauge sentiment across multiple topics. And of course, with the introduction of Copilot, we've included questions about engagement with Copilot to understand sentiment about AI. And so this analysis, it includes correlating results from questions about AI with our thriving metrics, which are the metrics that we use to understand the employee experience, where thrive is defined as being energized and then also empowered to do meaningful work. And in partnering with our HRBI team, we found that employees who use Copilot at least once every week are more likely to say that they're thriving and take initiative to be productive. And this is, in fact, stronger over time. And so in a lot of ways, it validates further investment in our adoption efforts, right? And driving usage. And what's really cool is it also helps give us an understanding of the factors that are positively related to things like learning about AI. For example, being exposed to different people or a wide network of people or community of people who might be using Copilot in different ways. And then just also ensuring and doing what we can to ensure that our people are able to dedicate the time to learning about AI. We've also learned that that higher scores on what we've identified as the most important factors that support thriving, again, finding meaning in work, feeling empowered and feeling energized, they also translate to a measurable boost in productivity, and access to AI seems to correlate with higher scores in each of those areas. And so case in point, meaningfulness, right? A key factor to ensuring employees find their work meaningful is minimizing time spent on tasks that don't feel meaningful. And so that's where Copilot can come in, right? To help lighten that load. And in fact, our HRBI team has found that incorporating AI into the day correlated to a 20% jump in scores relating to meaningful work. And so, to connect the dots between our signals results and the actions that we've taken as a central team to drive adoption, we've been real intentional about seeking out those internal champs, as Liz mentioned earlier, right, to offer them support and encouragement and, give them the resources that they need. And so these are the folks, of course, who are willing to, experiment and find ways to use AI to take some of that drudgery out of the day-to-day. And so it's all about seeking out those folks and helping support them, with the education and resources that they need. We ultimately want our people to feel equipped to engage with AI. And we could jump forward to the next slide there. And so we're also using M365 Copilot adoption and impact reporting through Viva Insights. It will help us understand, frequency of usage across HR, and then also its impact on, common workplace activities like meetings, document creation, and so forth. And so this includes keeping an eye, on Copilot adoption rates, things like monthly active user, weekly active user, and then also daily active user, which are those behavioral usage metrics. We're using those to really, understand where we are against our usage goals that Liz shared earlier, and we'll publish those results as part of our roundup. And then it also allows us to, view trends in Copilot usage across orgs and teams within HR. And then we can also see a breakdown of usage across M365 apps. And that also includes the features that are most used within each app. And so it's super valuable information that we can, of course, use as a central team to identify specific groups that are realizing the most value from Copilot, but then also, which groups may need some additional support in adopting Copilot. Ultimately enables us to pivot quickly and zoom in a particular area and reach out and potentially offer some support. Also helps us pinpoint where specific adoption activities that we've led as a team or that were led more broadly across the org have driven things like an increase in usage. And so it helps us get to, an understanding of the effectiveness of what we're driving. And on the impact side, the reporting also gives us insight into the Copilot assisted hours metric. And there's a great Work Lab article out on this, which is essentially a composite score reflecting key data points like meeting hours summarized, email coaching actions taken, email threads summarized, and many more. And so we're looking at that. It's really an indicator for us at this stage to see, if we may have an opportunity to provide specific training or skilling in apps like, Excel or PowerPoint or others, as an example. And I'll also say, and just quickly highlight, that we're partnering with our Microsoft Digital team and of course, our Viva People Science team as well to kind of further tap into, before and after Copilot behavioral insights across those key workplace areas like meetings, Teams chats, email, and then documents as well. And so there's a ton of opportunity here, and it's been real cool just partnering with our teams, helping improve the product along the way, through our partnerships as Customer Zero. And I would say in a lot of ways, it feels like we're just scratching the surface. We can go ahead and move forward there. Awesome. And of course, Liz mentioned our AI champ community earlier, and that we've really established to help support the rollout of Copilot as part of our overall approach. And so it's that key community. And again, these champs are the types of individuals that I spoke about earlier who are willing to experiment and find new ways to use AI. They're early adopters. They're closer to the work and closer to the roles within their respective orgs. And so we've worked through this champ community to send out the Viva Pulse Copilot for M365 adoption survey out of the box. And the intent there is to really help us gauge, our employees' understanding of how to use Copilot in their daily work, whether the prompts that they're creating are generating useful responses, any barriers that they may have in their ability to use Copilot. And then also really just to provide space for people to expand on, potential concerns or their excitedness as well. And so it's another tool in our toolkit. Has really given us insight into how particular teams are progressing in their adoption of Copilot, and then also how we can help support. And, as an example, if we have time constraints surfacing as a theme, inhibiting adoption on one hand, and on the other hand, we have users highlighting how Copilot has improved their productivity and it's saving them time on tasks like writing emails or creating templates, it's a bit of an adoption paradox, right, that we have to work through. And with that, as an example, if we have peer-to-peer learning surfacing as one of the most helpful resources for people to learn how to use Copilot, it's really figuring out, how can we wedge that type of learning into our approach, either through our champs community or people managers, or perhaps even both. And so I think it's really figuring out, how can we overcome some of these initial barriers and then help guide our people to the point to where they start to experience the benefits of using Copilot. That's really what we're focused on driving. And there's definitely no silvered solution here. And so what's great about combining the outputs from Glint, from Insights, and then also Pulse is that they've kind of helped us get to a more holistic measurement strategy. And I would say it's not just tracking numbers, it's also helping us narrate the story of the transformation that we're going through. I'll stop there. And then Liz, I believe I'm handing it back to you.
Great. Thanks for going through that, David. And so, just picking up on that, kind of what has been the story, what have we learned? I'll walk through a couple of takeaways. And so we've been at this for about a year. We, first had our initial instances of Copilot with an early adopter group in HR about a year ago. And we've then scaled to having everyone in the function and everyone at the company with access. And there's been a lot we've learned along the way. And the thing that I would say at the start, and my team and I talk a lot about this, is as we're looking to drive this change and this transformation, we really just want to be mindful of what are we trying to solve for? What strategy are we putting in place to support what we're trying to solve for? And it will change at different stages. In the beginning, as I said, we were really focused on just helping people understand where we are in this moment and what we're asking of them, to giving them permission and actually asking them to take time to learn, and then kind of building through some foundational pieces and then shifting to, okay, now that we know the foundation, now to experiment this way. So along the way, really being clear of what are we trying to accomplish, and then having our strategy follow that. And so we're certainly not tool first, we're really about outcome first. And that has been a really solid starting place for any conversation of how do we go about this? So each quarter, because again, things are happening so fast, and this is part of, I'd say, how we're shifting our change mentality. It's not here's a change plan for the next year. It's let's just kind of go quarter by quarter, and sometimes even month by month, of what do we really need right now? And then what do we anticipate coming next? So that would be the first piece. And, on that second notion of just how we're enhancing, this is very much about just being mindful of the environment. Any work environment, any environment period, can be so noisy and so overwhelming. And so how do we help to not add to that, but to help calm that. How do we really think behind the scenes ourselves? We deal with the noise so that our audiences can get something that is more curated and easy to consume. And then how can we introduce it to them where they are in a way that's going to meet them best? Part of that is by bringing people together. And we've got data that shows that peer-to-peer learning is some of the stickiest form of learning, can be the most effective. And not only that, people just really enjoy it. It is easier to take a team meeting and use that to learn together, because then, number one, you're not trying to create new time, you're using existing time and just repurposing it. And you are working together to answer questions or discover things and show excitement about what you're learning, or discuss fear of what you're learning, or any of those different emotional components that you can do really effectively as a group, as opposed to having people just learn in isolation. So that combination of synchronous and asynchronous learning, one-to-one, one-to-many, has been really quite helpful. Also, something that has been really important has been having a strong leader voice, or multiple strong leader voices. This has been, AI Copilot has been a key priority for all of us in terms of using it and learning it, giving feedback to the product team as to what's working and what's not, giving feedback to each other about what's working and what's not, and having our leaders say, this is what we are asking you to do, this is important for us as we are evolving our practice, has been essential. And with that, we're not asking people to start, at expert status, but really to kind of take step by step and to learn something new and be open to this learning process. It has really been about experimentation. It's really been about how are we more productive? How are we more creative in leveraging Copilot in the work that we're doing, and really having that broad conversation anytime we get together in any of our learning environments. Or in any time we're talking together as a function. And again, given the volume of things that are happening, the number of things that are happening at once, it is very easy to get overwhelmed versus just saying, okay, we're going to take one piece at a time. Let us deal with the noise as kind of those who are thinking through the change, and let us try to figure out what's most critical to put in front of people at any given time, and also to follow where the energy is. So where we see pockets of energy, we really go there and see, how can we optimize that? How can we maximize it and learn from it? And where there's not energy, what are we learning from that? And how do we adjust our tactics as we go? I'd say this has been a very agile process. And by working with our communities, we learn all the time about what's working and what's not, and then we're able to tweak and tinker. And so all of the places where we're able to connect, all of the places where we're able to listen, and all the places we're able to measure have just been super valuable in helping us gauge where we are in this transformation and change our strategy, change our tactics as we need. So that is what we have to share, is kind of our view of this exciting time, this time of change, and how we've been able to leverage the different tools. So I'd love to open it up to any questions and discussion.
Thanks, Liz and David. We actually do have one question from the audience, and then a few more that I think will kind of shed light on some of the items you talked about. So we have a question here. How can one join the community of practice? So I think this is, Liz, in regards to when you were talking about getting started at Microsoft and how you're thinking about it.
Sure. So the community of practice that we have is internal. It's internal to Microsoft HR. We wanted something that all of our Microsoft HR team could have as a place to kind of gather around the virtual water cooler, if you will, and talk about AI in Microsoft HR. That said, anyone can create a community of practice, here or in your own company, and it's something that I would say has been a really valuable starting place for the conversation of, what does AI and Copilot mean in my function or in this team? And so the way we went about it ourselves was we knew we wanted to use Viva Engage as our platform, and one of my team members built out a strategy and said, this is how I want to communicate initially and structure this community of practice. We're going to have this type of content that the moderator will pose. We'll reach out to people at this cadence to get started, and we'll see how it goes. We will include this audience. And so kind of stipulating all of the different components, had a clear strategy, then created this space and issued invitations to the broader HR organization. And actually for the past year, we have been consistently reinforcing that if you want to get started and join the AI conversation, join the community of practice. And so we have a standard link that we send out and have people join. So that's how we've done it. And it's been kind of a very low risk, high reward venture where we were able to try it out and see if it worked. And it's actually been one of the best aspects of our community engagement from the start and ongoing.
Thank you, Liz. And actually, one thing I did want to add is that with Viva Amplify, we do have some templates for creating these communities specifically around an M365 Copilot deployment. But again, I think they could be leveraged for any kind of tech or sort of, message you're really trying to gather communities around in your organization. And I'll drop more information in the comments in the community where this recording is embedded. So let's bring up, we actually have one kudo here. Thank you for the opportunity to learn more about the uses for Copilot and what can be done with 365 apps, along 365 apps. Incredible topic. That's really, really, thank you to whoever said that in the audience.
That's great.
And before we jump into kind of the questions we had planned, like this one you see on screen, I was wondering, just with that and kind of building off that, Liz and David, if you have insights from any recent customer discussions or events you've attended, or, in regards to sort of building out a community of practice or building out a kind of thinking through, I think all the topics you talked through today, if you've gotten any feedback on that or seen customers sort of thinking about the same things or what that looks like.
Yeah, I would say any customer I've talked to, any other HR practitioners, my peers in other companies, we're all dealing with a lot of the same questions and a lot of the same challenges, right? Certainly the challenges that you put up at the start of this hour about how do we handle privacy, confidentiality, all the things that we as HR practitioners think about every single day, right? Anytime anything new comes across, we're always starting with that question of just how is this protecting our employees and their information. And so that's something that we're always thinking about. That's just universal related to kind of this time and this change that I would expect many people are thinking of the same. And so there's that aspect, but then just in any type of change, how do you deal with just the number of things that you want people to know that are competing with all of the other things that you want them to know? And that's just a challenge, I think, in any business that has a lot going on, which is every business. And so that's where we'll get into conversations about, like how are we trying to kind of manage in that environment and to get the attention of people whose time is very limited. And so that's where we kind of look and say, okay, if we look in our toolkit, what do we have that can help us with that? I don't want to start things from scratch. I don't want to I don't want to recreate the wheel. I want to go and use proven technologies in this case, or other tools to be able to reach different audiences in a meaningful way. And so that's where our conversation typically starts, because we're all looking to do the same thing, which is to do right by our employees, to do right by our colleagues in HR. And so that's where we're experimenting with different tools, and we'll just kind of compare notes about, what's working and what's not. And generally what I found is, in trying to build community, it is really nice to have a place, a virtual place, especially with how we're working today, to just have conversations and to build connections, to build community, to build trust and relationships. And that's, I would say, and this goes a little further, into detail than maybe your question, Lucy, but one of the things that I found most wonderful about the communities and the virtual communities we're building is how people show up for one another. And when we are, putting things in to say, like, here's an experiment, we create different learning snacks, we call them, and things that our champs can take to their teams as 15-minute exercises to learn how to use a component of Copilot or to apply what they've learned. And what I see in the community is someone will come forward and say, hey, I worked on this and I brought it to my team, and here's what worked really well. Here's what I would cut out. Here's what I would change. And that way the next champ who goes in and picks this up has something that is that much better and more well-informed to take to their team. And so there's this give and take, or, hey, I'm trying to do this and it's not working. Can anyone else figure out how to do that? Oh, I can help you do that. Or here's a resource who can help you. So just the camaraderie, the connection is something that is happening in this virtual space that is really gratifying, and is the thing that I think just keeps on powering the community forward.
Yeah, and two things really spoke to me about what you just said. I think the first is the building off each other's work. I think that has definitely been kind of an evolution, an amazing evolution in Microsoft's culture of like building off each other and the sort of strengths and what we're learning along the way, and kind of, evolving that ourselves. And then the second is, I think Microsoft does such a great job internally of our champs kind of culture in relationship to any product or any offering or any kind of community. And I think, to your point, Viva Engage is like the vehicle to that. It's just the platform in which you kind of enable that and empower that. And again, like we've been saying, that can be around AI adoption and making sure everyone's aware of how these tools can make them more productive and impactful, but it can also be around, anything that your organization cares about.
For sure. And I think the component of, within community, just observing what's happening in the community and who's there and how they're engaging. Like I said, it was really helpful for us to identify who else were our change agents, who are just intrinsically motivated to get out there and help others learn. And they have been a huge part of our change effort in being able to reach out at scale. And so that's been another really nice element, not nice, like really valuable element of the engaged community.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, let's go to our question here that, we did a little thinking about. How do you know when to use AI in HR efforts and when not to?
I'll take this one, David, and talk a little bit more about responsible AI. And at the very top, I started in saying, when we're thinking about our mindset, when we're looking to inspire folks, there's a lot that people want to be able to do using Copilot and using these incredible new tools. But as I also mentioned, like in HR, we have a natural restraint. We're always thinking about, is this the right thing to do? How am I making sure that I'm using data responsibly, that I'm just managing my work in the way that we should, and that anyone is protecting privacy, confidentiality, that we're in compliance. And so we really started the conversation with our HR team around responsible AI and what are our principles around responsible AI. And so that really helped set the tone. And actually, when we think about it further, we recognize that, a lot of the questions do come down to, well, how is the tool going to work, and is my information safe? And so we've reinforced data management practices and ensuring that people individually have strong data management practices, because it's important to be in control of your own data. We've also helped people learn about how the tool actually works, how Copilot works, and what enterprise security is in place, and how, when working in the enterprise environment, you have a more secure environment to do the work that you want to do. And then third is, how are we actually using the tool, and in what types of scenarios? And in any scenario where someone runs into a question, I've been delighted to find that the default response has been, don't use the tool, ask more questions, get curious, and learn what is possible and what is not, so that we start in a position of compliance, we start in a position of responsibility. And so it's really an ongoing conversation. And as we learn and as we discover appropriate uses of tools or not, we are publishing guidance kind of in bits and pieces to our different teams, and often it's role specific, as they kind of bring forward scenarios to our experts and say, hey, is this okay to do, or is this not? So really, it's been an ongoing learning process that is really grounded in our responsible AI principles. And there's content online about Microsoft's responsible AI principles and practices, if anyone needs a starting point, just to start their own thinking about this. It's certainly been valuable for us.
Thank you, Liz. And then I think we have just a couple more questions here. So what are the benefits of Copilot beyond productivity when it comes to the employee experience? That's a question we're starting to get some push on from customers that we talk to, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And happy to take this one. I love this question. And it's something that I'm passionate about for sure. And I've been referring to it as the so what behind the so what, right? It's something top of mind for me and the team as well. And I would say it's something that we talk about regularly, right? We want to know how AI can help not only drive the business forward, but also help us humans be more human. And so we've defined what we're referring to as our AI and HR value dimensions. These are key areas of measurement where we believe AI can have a significant impact across the function. Yes, productivity is included, but also things like quality, employee experience, risk, adoption, and even market impact as well. And so we're thinking about what that impact looks like across those areas to our people, and then also thinking longer term and thinking about this more holistically, I should say, and what this means for the different roles that we have in HR as well. What does it mean to an employee when they're more productive? What options does it give them in terms of how they use their time? Are they able to reinvest any time savings into their well-being or their learning, experimentation, or even to improve the quality of their work as well? And if they're able to improve the quality of their work, are they able to take greater pride in what they're producing? One of the things I'm also interested in learning more about is, does Copilot enhance the goal gradient effect, where people tend to put in extra effort as they get closer to their objectives, right? And so does Copilot help people get closer to those objectives faster, right? Thus enhancing the effect. And so I'd say it's something that we're continuing to explore and learn about. And I think it's really being intentional about holding ourselves accountable as well. We want to make sure that we're applying AI in ways that meet these different value dimensions. It's really as important for us to improve our people's experience and minimize risk as it is to boost productivity. And I would say a good real world example of this are the results coming out of recent studies where we've partnered with our Office of the Chief Economist to evaluate how Copilot in Dynamics 365 customer service impacts our HR support teams. And so this included focusing on the impact to agent productivity, where we're seeing a 20% increase in case throughput. And then we also found that agents using Copilot an average of 40 times per week as part of their handling of support cases are 16% more likely to enjoy their job than those who are not using Copilot. And so these are statistically significant results where we have high confidence, and tying it back to thriving, we're finding that, when Copilot helps streamline processes and reduce manual effort, our people are experiencing less stress, and they're also more empowered to focus on more meaningful work, which is really cool to see.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I can think of so many examples, just even in my own, everyday work where I save time and mental load of like coming up with next steps, understanding how to message something properly. I think when you start to total that up and start to really accrue that, there's just so much opportunity. And I know we have one final question before we close out. So what is the greatest challenge of bringing AI into HR practices? I'm sure this is a webinar all unto itself, but what are some items that you would highlight?
I'll maybe highlight a couple, and then David, please chime in with additional. I would say the number one, it was probably a theme that came across in this hour, is time. That is the number one challenge. And so I always, my team always talks about how do we earn the right to ask for someone's time? Because everyone has more than they can do in any given day. And so if we're asking them to carve out part of their day to learn or to connect or engage, what's the incentive for them to do so? So that's the biggest challenge. And I view it really as our biggest challenge to address. And I think we can, and a lot of that is by meeting people where they are. And, often we'll hear this concept of being in the flow of work. And I think that is so valuable to minimize, how much we are jumping in and out of things, but where within, a series of meetings that we've already got, or communications we're already running, or conversations we're already having, can we layer in value so that there's real incentive for people to take time to learn. That would be the number one. David, what are other things that you have observed or seen in the measurements?
No, for sure. Time, I would echo time for sure. And then I suppose perhaps number two on my list would really just be, maintaining a high level of trust in a rapidly changing environment with how quickly things are moving and how quickly the technology is evolving as well. And so, as a central team, it's, of course, creating, that transparency where we can, getting in front of scenarios where biases can surface. And then, focusing on being honest about, accuracy and reliability when it comes to our tools. And then I know prioritizing security and safety as well. And so that's where we can come in and kind of help maintain that trust and, do what we can to foster really a culture that values transparency, education as well. And then that we're communicative, not only about the benefits of AI, but also the limitations. And then just ensuring that our people feel valued and supported along the way. Yeah.
Thank you. I want to thank you both for this hour. I think it's been super valuable for those who are watching live or who are watching afterwards. If you have follow-up questions, please leave them in the comments on the event page, and we'll be sure to get back to you and have our experts here get back to you. But thank you again. We're going to flash up a few key resources here we just wanted to leave you with, and I think we've mentioned many more. But we have, I think, a slide for this that I just wanted to make sure folks saw, and we'll also put the AK links and maybe even put them in the comments below the event here. But a few things that we touched on today: enhancing employee listening in Microsoft with Glint, so how you can kind of weave this into your strategy, driving Microsoft 365 Copilot adoption with an assist from Microsoft Viva, and then unlocking the potential of Copilot at the role level. So we'll flash these AK links up and just thank you for taking the time to be here with us today. Thanks, Liz and David.
Thank you. Thanks, Lucy.
Thanks, everyone.